Hello, folks, and welcome back from the break. Today, we're finally going to reach Italy with Aeneas, where we'll follow him through the terrors of the Underworld. But first, let's take a look at Book 5. In Book 5, which we haven't read, Aeneas and his fleet returned to Sicily, where they staged an elaborate funeral for Aeneas's father, Anchises. This event included funeral games, much like the funeral of Patroclus in Book 23 of the Iliad. The event that got the most attention in Homer was a chariot race between various heroes. Virgil attempts to outdo Homer in Book 5 by staging not a chariot race, but a boat race. It is a fun little diversion from the otherwise heavy and dark themes of the rest of the epic, if you care to read it. At the start of Book 6, Aeneas's fleet has at last reached Italy. As advised by the prophet Helenus, they first put in at a place called Cumae in order for Aeneas to consult yet another prophet called the Sibyl of Cumae. The Sibyl of Cumae is a priest of both Apollo and Hecate, which allows her to do two things for Aeneas. First, she lets herself be divinely inspired by Apollo in order to tell Aeneas about the struggles he faces, the wars he must wage, and where to find allies. This prepares Aeneas for events in the short term, but they do not give Aeneas the long-term view. In other words, what is the whole purpose of him undertaking these massive tasks? Why bring his people to Italy, fight a war, and found a city? Lucky for Aeneas, the Sibyl is also a priestess of Hecate, a goddess of the underworld. By practicing Hecate's rites, the Sibyl can grant access for Aeneas to the underworld itself, where he can find the answers to his questions. For the ghost of his father Anchises had told him in a dream that he must visit him in the underworld. Before Aeneas can visit the underworld, however, he learns that his crewman, a man named Maecenas, had accidentally drowned, and Virgil devotes several lines to Aeneas taking part in preparing a funeral for his fallen comrade and conducting the rites of the dead. Even at this crucial juncture, Aeneas makes time for duty to his men. Aeneas is now ready to enter the underworld, guided by the Sibyl. Unlike Odysseus in the Odyssey, Aeneas physically descends into the underworld itself, a catabasis, and Virgil walks us through its various parts in geographical detail. Indeed, it was the Aeneid's vivid description of the underworld that inspired Dante's Inferno, where the ghost of Virgil himself treats the pilgrim Dante to a guided tour of the Christian hell. Aeneas crosses the river Styx into the underworld, putting him on the same level as Orpheus and Hercules as heroes who accomplish this feat. But the underworld he enters is not exactly the one that Odysseus describes in the Odyssey. One major change from Homer's underworld is the role of King Minos. In the Odyssey, Minos merely resolved disputes among the souls of the dead. In Virgil's Hades, Minos is the judge of the dead, in the sense where he determines where in the underworld you belong. As before, most are judged to dwell in the fields of mourning, the neutral realm where most people will go. It is a bleak, joyless existence. Here Aeneas encounters the ghost of Dido, who, like Ajax in the Odyssey, gives him the silent treatment, despite Aeneas insisting that he was following the commands of the gods. He encounters here comrades and enemies from the Trojan War, still in their blood-stained armor and bearing their battle wounds. As Aeneas continues, he comes to a fork in the road. The left-hand path goes to Tartarus, the right-hand path to Elysium. Aeneas is granted a glimpse of Tartarus, the infernal prison for wicked sinners. This is part of the underworld most resembling and anticipating the hell of Dante and Christian mythology. Virgil's Tartarus is not only a prison for those exceptional sinners against the gods, such as Tantalus and Sisyphus, it imprisons and tortures anyone who commits terrible crimes. The Sibyl sums up the general natures of these crimes thus, quote, "Here are those who hated their brothers while alive, or struck their fathers down, or embroiled clients in fraud, or brooded alone over troves of gold they gained and never put aside some share for their own kin, a great multitude these. Then those killed for adultery, those who marched to the flag of civil war, and never shrank from breaking their pledge to their lords and masters, all of them walled up here, wait to meet their doom." End quote. The crimes punished in Tartarus all have something in common, and that is that they cause political chaos. They are crimes of treason, which undo the ties that bind society together. They are the opposite of pietas. They drive families apart, break bonds of loyalty, and destroy marriages. The Sibyl also notes that the greatest portion of these sinners are those who hoard wealth rather than using it to better their society. Virgil also lived through the horrors of the Roman civil wars, the ultimate crime that tears a whole society apart, as we will read later on in Lucan. Aeneas is then led to his ultimate destination in the underworld, the paradise of Elysium. This place is the opposite of Tartarus, a place of bliss and carefree living. Here dwell those who, indeed, did the opposite of the sinners in Tartarus. Quote, and here are troops of men who had suffered wounds, fighting to save their country, and those who had been pure priests while still alive, and the faithful poets whose songs were fit for Phoebus. Those who enriched our lives with the newfound arts they forged, and those we remember well for the good they did mankind. End quote. We see in these lines an air of political propaganda. These are the virtues expected of a proper Roman, who is willing to sacrifice his own personal interests, even sacrifice his life, for the sake of the greater good of gods, family, and country. Elysium is for those who contributed positively to their society, not just in warfare, but in religion and the arts as well. Being a poet himself, Virgil naturally places his own kind in this paradise. Elysium is no longer just reserved for the gods' favorites. It is now a place of heavenly reward for the most just and those who work to strengthen the bonds of society. It is here in Elysium that Aeneas reunites with his father Anchises. Anchises can now reveal to Aeneas two important things. First, he describes the process of reincarnation. The soul of every human that dies descends to the underworld to its apportioned place within it. Most spend this time being purged of the sins they committed while on earth. After 1,000 years, the souls drink from the river Lethe in order to forget their past life and are reborn into new bodies. This is a doctrine that Virgil borrows from the philosopher Plato, who in many of his works argues that the soul is immortal and goes through cycles of reincarnation after it is punished or rewarded after death. It is clear that in Virgil we glimpse a point in history where notions of punishment and reward after death are becoming more mainstream. Unlike the Homeric epics, where the goal of the hero is time and ultimately kleos, in the Aeneid, rewards in this life pale in comparison to what awaits you afterward, provided you practice selflessness and work to make the world a better place. The second thing Anchises reveals is that Elysium, the souls of various future Roman heroes are lined up, waiting to drink from the river Lethe so that they may take on human flesh. These men include Aeneas's direct descendants down to the founder of Rome itself, Romulus. After Romulus comes the 6 other kings of Rome. Then we meet various heroes of the Roman Republic, such as Scipio, who defeated Hannibal. Finally, we get to the likes of Julius Caesar and Augustus himself. Aeneas is finally shown what is at stake in his mission. This is the future of his Trojan people that will be fulfilled by the struggles Aeneas will soon face when he returns to the world above. It is at this point where Anchises turns to Aeneas and addresses him with this advice, quote, others, I have no doubt, will forge the bronze to breathe with suppler lines, draw from the block of marble features quick with life, plead their cases better, chart with their rods the stars that climb the sky and foretell the times they rise. But you, Roman, remember, rule with all your power the peoples of the earth. These shall be your arts, to put a stamp on the works and ways of peace, to spare the defeated, break the proud in war. End quote. Anchises tells Aeneas what it means to be Roman. The Romans are not artists, orators, philosophers, or scientists like the Greeks or other people. The purpose of the Romans is to rule all the nations so that they may bring peace to the world. World peace should be the ultimate goal of Roman rule, and a Roman ruler should exercise that rule by showing mercy to those he vanquishes. Finally, he is to ensure that individual pride is kept in check. This is no longer a society of heroic individuals who care only about their own prestige. Rome is about the collective good. Remember these lines when you get to the very end of the Aeneid. Following this vision, Aeneas is ready to depart the underworld. To do so, he must pass through one of 2 gates. And I quote, there are twin gates of sleep. One, they say, is called the Gate of Horn, and it offers easy passage for all true shades. The other glistens with ivory, radiant, flawless, but through it the dead send false dreams up toward the sky. And here Anchises, in his vision told in full, escorts his son and the Sibyl both, and shows them out now through the ivory gate. End quote. Why does Aeneas exit through the gate of false dreams? What does this say about his mission, or the vision he just received from his father? Is the dream of Rome a false one? Or is it simply because Aeneas is not a dream but a living being, and therefore cannot exit through the gate of true dreams? As you ponder that, look forward to our next lecture that covers books 7 through 8 of the Aeneid.